So you're looking into all the different paths to spirituality, and it's kind of amazing how many different beliefs are out there, right? And they all seem to be searching for, well, the same thing.
It is pretty wild, isn't it?
We're taking a deep dive into this YouTube video with a pretty bold title, I have to say. It's called The Only Video You'll Ever Need for the Rest of Your Life, Complete Guide to Spiritual Awakening.
Whoa. That's quite a claim. Makes you wonder if they can really deliver on a promise like that, right?
Right. Let's see if they can. So the video starts with this quote by Gandhi. He says, "There are as many paths to God as there are souls on earth." What are your thoughts on that?
That's a good one. I think that quote really captures, like, the essence of spiritual exploration. You know what I mean?
Huh.
It suggests that the journey to the divine is, well, it's deeply personal, unique to each individual.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's interesting because this idea, it resonates throughout history, like from ancient mystical traditions to, well, modern spiritual movements.
hmm The video uses the example of Christianity, with its focus on prayer and devotion, contrasted with Buddhism and its emphasis on meditation and detachment. It seems like they're trying to highlight the diversity of approaches.
Exactly. And then they go on to present this analogy of a mountain with multiple trails all leading to the summit.
Okay, I'm following.
It's suggesting that each path, though different in practice, can ultimately lead to, well, the same destination: spiritual enlightenment.
I see. So it's like it doesn't really matter which trail you take as long as you're heading towards the top of the mountain.
Well, that's a great question, and it's one that a lot of spiritual seekers grapple with. I think what matters most is finding a path that resonates with your individual nature, your values, your current stage of spiritual development.
I can see how that would be important. The video also stresses that spirituality goes beyond any specific religion, right? It's about connecting with that spiritual essence that unites us all.
Yeah.
So it's less about the dogma and more about the individual's connection to something greater, right?
And this can be incredibly liberating for some because it takes the pressure off having to adhere to rigid doctrines. It allows you to explore different practices and beliefs and create a spiritual path that feels authentic to you.
So you're saying we can pick and choose practices from different traditions like prayer, yoga, or contemplation, and kind of blend them into our own personal practice.
That's what the video seems to be suggesting. It emphasizes that the intention behind the practice is what truly matters. If you're engaging in these practices with a sincere desire to connect with something, well, something larger than yourself, then yeah, you're on the right track. But the video then dives into something we all struggle with, the ego. It uses this analogy of the soul as a crystal cup filled with impurities and the ego being a major one.
Okay, let's unpack this whole ego thing. What exactly do they mean by that, and how does it relate to spiritual awakening?
So they portray the ego as, it's kind of like a false sense of self. It's that voice in our heads that's constantly comparing, judging, and seeking validation from the outside world. It creates this sense of separation, this like me versus them mentality. And it can be a major obstacle, I mean, a really major obstacle on the spiritual path.
I think we can all relate to that feeling of being trapped in our own thoughts and insecurities. The video seems to be saying that, well, to achieve spiritual awakening, we need to transcend the ego. But how do we actually do that? It seems like a pretty daunting task, to be honest.
Well, it's definitely not easy. The video suggests that practices like mindfulness and gratitude can help us detach from the ego's grip. By observing our thoughts without judgment and focusing on the good in our lives, we can start to chip away at the ego's hold on us.
So instead of getting caught up in the I want this, I need that mentality, we shift our focus to appreciating what we already have.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of contentment and recognizing that true happiness comes from within, not from external validation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So if the ego is such a big obstacle, are there examples of people who've, managed to overcome it? I'm curious to know what that looks like in real life.
That's where it gets really interesting. The video goes on to highlight spiritual masters and mystics who seem to, well, they embodied this idea of living beyond the ego. They talk about figures like St. Francis of Assisi, who embraced poverty and dedicated his life to serving others.
Right, right.
And then there's Rumi, whose poetry is filled with like expressions of divine love and unity.
And what's so compelling about these examples is that they demonstrate that spiritual awakening isn't just some abstract concept.
Right.
It's something that can be lived and expressed in very tangible ways. These individuals, I mean, they weren't perfect, but their lives offer us glimpses of what's possible when we align ourselves with something larger than our individual egos. But those are some pretty lofty examples. It can feel kind of intimidating to compare ourselves to these spiritual giants. Do you think it's even possible for, everyday people like us to achieve that same level of spiritual realization? I mean, we have jobs, families, and all sorts of worldly responsibilities. How do we even begin to reconcile those things with this pursuit of, well, transcending the ego?
I think it's important to remember that spiritual awakening is a journey, not a destination. It's not about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment overnight. It's about making small, consistent efforts to cultivate more awareness, compassion, and connection in our lives.
So maybe it's not about becoming the next Rumi, but rather about incorporating those principles of love, service, and gratitude into our daily interactions. Small acts of kindness can ripple outwards, right?
Precisely. And the video emphasizes that even these spiritual masters face their own challenges and setbacks. It's not about being perfect, it's about continually striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
And it seems that karma and dharma play a crucial role in this journey. The video spends some time exploring these concepts and how they shape our spiritual evolution.
Right. They suggest that life is a continuous journey of the soul, shaped by the energy of our actions, karma, and our unique purpose, our dharma.
So karma is like that cosmic boomerang, right? What we put out into the world eventually comes back to us.
Well, it's a bit more nuanced than that. It's more about understanding that our actions have consequences, both for ourselves and for the world around us. It's not about punishment or reward, but rather about cause and effect.
Okay, I'm starting to see how karma ties into this idea of spiritual growth. But what about dharma? How does our unique purpose fit into all of this?
That's a great question, and one that we can unpack in more detail as we continue our deep dive. Dharma is often described as our soul's blueprint or like our life's purpose. It's that unique set of talents, passions, and experiences that we're meant to express in the world. It could be something grand and world changing, or it could be, well, something seemingly small and personal. The key is that it feels aligned with our deepest selves.
So it's like that feeling of being in the flow, of doing what you're meant to be doing, right?
Exactly. And the video suggests that when we're living in alignment with our Dharma, life feels, well, more effortless and fulfilling. We experience a sense of purpose and meaning that kind of transcends the ups and downs of everyday life. But how do we actually discover our Dharma? How do we know if we're on the right track?
That's what I was wondering too. The video talks about this idea of life being a continuous journey of the soul, right?
Yeah.
It seems to be implying that we're always evolving and our dharma can evolve too.
That's a really interesting point, and it makes sense if we consider the concept of karma as well. As we learn and grow from our experiences, our understanding of ourselves, and our purpose can deepen.
So karma and dharma are intertwined. They're not separate concepts.
I think the video is suggesting that they work together. Our karma, the energy of our past actions, can influence the opportunities and challenges we face. It shapes the landscape of our lives. But within that landscape, we have the free will to make choices that align with our dharma, our evolving sense of purpose.
So it's not about being resigned to fate, but rather about understanding the karmic forces at play and making conscious choices that move us closer to our dharma.
Exactly. And the video encourages us and to pay attention to recurring patterns in our lives, to things that consistently bring us joy or challenge us to grow. These could be clues pointing us towards our dharma. Have you ever noticed any patterns like that in your own life?
Now that you mention it, I've always felt drawn to creative pursuits. Writing, music, art. They've always been a source of joy and inspiration for me. Maybe that's a clue to my dharma.
It could be. It sounds like those activities tap into something deep within you. And the video emphasizes that our dharma doesn't have to be something like grandiose. It can be as simple as expressing our unique gifts and talents in a way that brings meaning and purpose to our lives and to the lives of others.
That's a relief to hear because I was starting to feel like I needed to discover some epic, world-changing mission.
It's important to remember that each of us has a unique role to play in the grand tapestry of life. And that role doesn't have to be flashy or extraordinary to be meaningful.
This is all making me think about the bigger picture. If life is this continuous journey of the soul, then where does death fit into this framework? It's something that most spiritual traditions address in some way, and I'm curious to know how this video tackles such a, complex topic.
That's a profound question, and I think it's one that many of us contemplate at some point in our lives. The video presents it's an interesting perspective on death, viewing it not as an ending, but as a transformation.
I remember they used that analogy of a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly.
Yes. It's a beautiful metaphor for the soul's journey. just as the caterpillar sheds its old form to emerge as a butterfly. The video suggests that death is, well, it's simply a shedding of the physical body. It allows the soul to continue its journey in a different form.
So it's not an end, but like a transition to a different state of being.
That's the idea the video is conveying.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes that this perspective can shift our fear of death into a sense of, I don't know, curiosity and acceptance. Instead of viewing death as something to be dreaded, we can start to see it as, well, as a natural part of the soul's evolution.
That's a really powerful reframing. It makes me think about all the different beliefs about what happens after death. Did they, delve into that at all?
They don't go into specific beliefs about the afterlife. They focus more on the overarching concept of death as a transformation and how that understanding can impact how we live our lives in the present moment.
I see. So it's more relevant to their message of spiritual awakening, right? Instead of getting bogged down in speculation about what might come next, we're encouraged to focus on making the most of our current incarnation.
Exactly. And they tie this back to the concept of karma and dharma, suggesting that how we live our lives now, it shapes the journey of our soul, both in this lifetime and, beyond.
So our actions and choices have implications that extend far beyond our current understanding.
That's what the video seems to be implying, yeah. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected and that our individual actions, they create ripples that affect the collective whole.
And this brings us to their final point, the concept of collective awakening. This is where things start to get really interesting for me, I have to say. They seem to be suggesting that individual awakening is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Yes, they emphasize that as more individuals awaken to their true nature and start living in alignment with their dharma, it creates a ripple effect. And that can influence the collective consciousness of humanity.
So it's not just about personal enlightenment, but about contributing to like a larger shift in awareness and consciousness.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all part of something much greater than ourselves, and that our individual actions can have a profound impact on the world around us.
They even made this bold statement, something like, change begins within each of us, but it has the power to touch thousands, millions, and perhaps transform all of humanity.
It's a call to action, an invitation to step into our power and become agents of positive change.
It's a pretty inspiring message, right? It makes you want to go out and make a difference in the world. But how do we actually do that? Where do we even begin?
That's a great question, and I think the video offers some practical guidance on that. We'll see as we wrap up our deep dive.
Okay, so we're talking about this idea of collective awakening, right? And they say change starts within, but can impact millions. I'm all for positive change, but it can feel kind of daunting. Where do we even begin?
That's where the video gets, well, really practical, I think. They highlight this idea of conscious choice making. Every decision we make, no matter how small, it contributes to the energy we put out into the world.
So it's not about grand gestures, but rather about like being mindful of our everyday actions and how they align with our values and our dharma.
Exactly. It's about those seemingly insignificant choices we make throughout the day,
Okay, yeah.
Do we react with anger and frustration, or do we choose, patience and understanding? Do we focus on lack and scarcity, or do we cultivate gratitude and abundance?
That's a really good point. You're making me think about those little moments that we usually just brush off, like letting someone merge in traffic or holding the door open for a stranger.
Right.
Those little acts of kindness can actually contribute to this, like collective shift.
The video suggests that they absolutely can. It's about shifting our mindset from me to we. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness and understanding that our actions, however small, well, they have the power to influence the whole.
It makes me wonder, what if, like, we all started making a conscious effort to choose kindness, compassion, and understanding in our daily interactions? What kind of impact could that have on the world,
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? And it's not just about being nice to others. It's about extending that same kindness and compassion to ourselves.
Self-compassion. That's a big one. The video doesn't explicitly mention it, but it seems to tie into their message of, like, transcending the ego, right?
You're right. It's all interconnected. When we can release self-judgment and embrace ourselves with all our imperfections, well, we free up so much energy to connect with others and contribute to something larger than ourselves.
Well, so collective awakening isn't just about changing the world out there, but also about transforming the world within ourselves.
Exactly. It's a both hand situation. The inner transformation fuels the outer transformation and vice versa.
That brings us back to that bold claim they made at the beginning. The only video you'll ever need for the rest of your life Complete Guide to Spiritual Awakening. Did they deliver? Was this the be-all and end-all guide to spiritual enlightenment?
Well, I don't know if any single video can provide a complete guide to, such a vast and multifaceted journey, but I do think this video offered some valuable insights and practical tools that can support us on our path.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely gave us a lot to think about and some concrete steps we can take to, like, deepen our spiritual practice.
And ultimately, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's not about finding all the answers in one place, but rather about cultivating a spirit of, well, curiosity, openness, and a willingness to continuously learn and grow.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways you'd like to leave our listener with?
First, I think it's crucial to remember that there is no one right path to spiritual awakening. The journey is unique to each individual, and what matters most is finding what resonates with your soul.
I love that. It takes the pressure off and encourages us to explore different practices and traditions without judgment.
Second, I think it's important to cultivate a daily practice that nourishes your spiritual growth, whether it's meditation, prayer, spending time in nature, or simply engaging in acts of kindness. Find what works for you and make it a regular part of your life.
Consistency is key, right?
Mhm.
Little actions add up over time.
Absolutely. And lastly, I encourage you to remember that you're not alone on this journey. We're all interconnected, and as we awaken to our true nature, we contribute to a collective shift in consciousness that can transform, well, the world.
What a beautiful thought to end on. I feel inspired to, take all of this and apply it to my own life. So to our listener out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and, well, maybe even a little bit transformative.
Remember, the journey of spiritual awakening is ongoing, and every moment offers an opportunity for growth and expansion. What will you choose today to nurture your soul and contribute to a more awakened world?